Imagine the South China Sea as a modern-day amphitheater, where the dramas of history, power, and diplomacy unfold on a global stage. This vast maritime expanse, steeped in centuries of territorial disputes and navigational heritage, has become a focal point of contemporary geopolitical debates. From ancient maritime trade routes that connected empires to present-day clashes over sovereignty and strategic interests, the South China Sea encapsulates the complexities of our interconnected world. Today, as China asserts historical claims through modern means, neighboring nations, major global powers like the United States, and international institutions scrutinize China's ambitions. This deep analysis will explore the multifaceted perspectives surrounding the South China Sea issue, shedding light on its significance for global security, trade, and the evolving norms of international relations.
中国愿意同美国做伙伴、做朋友。中国从不读美国书，从不干涉美国内政，也无意挑战和取代美国。
China's evolving posture in the South China Sea, marked by heightened assertiveness over territorial claims and maritime rights, has challenged the existing status quo and intensified friction among rival claimant states. This assertiveness is particularly notable in contrast to the reactions of other ASEAN claimants like Vietnam and the Philippines. The strategic interests driving China's actions in the South China Sea are deeply intertwined with economic, energy, and national security concerns. China's rapid economic growth has heightened its energy demand, making energy security a top priority. As the world's largest oil importer, China seeks to secure its energy supplies by diversifying routes and reducing dependence on traditional channels like the Strait of Malacca. Control over the South China Sea plays a crucial role in this strategy, enabling China to safeguard vital sea routes and assert dominance over the region's energy resources. China's sovereignty claims in the South China Sea are grounded in historical perspectives, including the Dash Line Doctrine, symbolizing expansive claims over the area. Despite international skepticism, China has consolidated control through measures like fishing bans, patrols, and construction activities on disputed islands. These actions, combined with China's strategic investments and military presence, have triggered reactions from neighboring countries and drawn scrutiny from global powers like the United States. Geopolitically, the South China Sea has become a focal point of rivalry between China and the US, with both countries seeking to assert influence and advance their strategic agendas. China's efforts to establish control over the South China Sea are seen by major powers as part of a broader challenge to the established international order. From China's perspective, the US military presence in East Asia is perceived as a containment strategy, prompting China to assert sovereignty to limit American power projection and consolidate its own regional influence. As China's economic and military ascendancy continues, its pursuit of core national interests in the South China Sea will remain a defining feature of regional dynamics, shaping international relations and global stability. Examining the European Union's EU perspective on the South China Sea issue reveals the region's importance for the EU's economic prosperity, diplomatic standing, and adherence to core normative values. The South China Sea constitutes one of the world's busiest sea lanes, crucial for global supply chains. As reported by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, over 1/5 of global trade transited through these waters in 2016 and continues to do so today. Additionally, the South China Sea holds extensive marine and hydrocarbon resources, essential for both regional and global interests. The positioning of the South China Sea as a strategic flashpoint presents potential conflicts involving claimant countries and major global powers like China and the United States. This directly impacts the EU, which heavily relies on stable sea lanes for its trade, encompassing goods such as cars, machinery, and luxury items.
Take the electric vehicle sector. It is a crucial industry for the clean economy with a huge potential in Europe. But global markets are now flooded with cheaper Chinese electric cars.
Instability in this region poses a serious threat to supply chains, carrying economic implications that both the EU and its Southeast Asian counterpart ASEAN cannot afford. Prominent EU members like Germany, France, and the Netherlands have substantial strategic and economic interests in Southeast Asia, particularly in major regional economies such as Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and Vietnam.
On the digital side, the opportunities will come both because that means if we have the right standards, then people can set up IT digital businesses in Singapore and be able to have a footprint which will cover Europe, which means more opportunities for us. And other businesses too will be able to use IT more, therefore will grow our trade and economic opportunities.
Beyond economic concerns, the EU upholds normative values, advocating for a rules-based international order anchored in international laws like the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea.
The European Union attaches to its major relationship with China. We have massive trade between us, 2.3 billion euros a day, and important investment stakes in each other's economies. And as major powers in the world, the European Union and China have global responsibilities. We have a shared interest in peace and security, in the effective functioning of the rules-based international order, and to find solutions to global challenges.
中欧关系呈现巩固发展的良好势头，这符合双方利益和人民期待。双方应该共同努力，保持中欧关系发展的势头。当今世界正经历100年未有之大变局，中欧作为推动
China's unilateral actions in the South China Sea, including the construction and militarization of artificial islands, challenge these fundamental values, is endangering the global liberal international order. The EU's Indo-Pacific strategy aligns with ASEAN's outlook on the Indo-Pacific, emphasizing ASEAN centrality. This strategic partnership between the EU and ASEAN, established in 2020 and furthered by summit-level dialogues, presents opportunities for cooperation. The EU is an active participant in the regional forums, demonstrating its commitment to multilateralism and consultation processes aimed at addressing global challenges.
And Europe wants to conclude more free trade agreements with other ASEAN countries. Our ultimate goal is one of a region-to-region agreement, and I think we need to seize now the opportunity and make it work.
Both the EU's maritime security strategy and the ASEAN Maritime Outlook highlight the significance of international maritime law, particularly UNCLOS. Maritime capacity building stands as a shared priority, with the EU and ASEAN focused on enhancing maritime capabilities through education, training, and technical assistance. The recent adoption of the Treaty of the High Seas by the UN represents a notable achievement for the EU and its member states, establishing a legal framework for the protection and utilization of maritime resources globally. This milestone is expected to enhance cooperation between the EU and ASEAN in shaping the Indo-Pacific region, reflecting the EU's commitment to upholding international norms and addressing challenges posed by the recent flaring developments in the South China Sea. India's defense policy, particularly its maritime strategy, is increasingly viewed through the lens of major powers' perceptions of the South China Sea issue. Traditionally focused on land borders with Pakistan and China, India's evolving global ambitions are now prominently displayed through its naval capabilities in international waters. Notably, India actively engages in anti-piracy patrols and deploys naval assets near the Red Sea during conflicts, such as Israel's war with Hamas, highlight its proactive stance in international maritime security. In light of disruptions caused by Yemen-based Houthi rebels targeting ships, India's swift deployment of guided missile destroyers and reconnaissance aircraft highlighted its role as a contributor to international maritime stability. India's naval initiatives also serve as a strategic signal to counter China's expanding maritime presence in the Indian Ocean, driven primarily by energy supply considerations. With China boasting the world's largest navy, India closely observed Beijing's deepening engagements in neighboring countries like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and the Maldives through infrastructure deals. Instances such as the Maldives allowing a Chinese research ship to dock and similar port calls in Sri Lanka raise concerns, prompting India to enhance its maritime capabilities in response to China's growing naval influence in the region. India's participation in the Quad, a strategic alliance with the United States, Australia, and Japan, aims to counter China's assertiveness, particularly in the South China Sea and broader Indo-Pacific arena. This alliance signifies shared concerns over China's maritime activities and territorial claims, further emphasizing India's pivotal role in the regional security calculus.
फ्री, ओपन और इंक्लूसिव इंडो पैसिफिक के हमारे विजन को प्रैक्टिकल डायमेंशन दे रहे हैं। मैरीटाइम सिक्योरिटी, काउंटर टेररिज्म जैसे महत्वपूर्ण क्षेत्रों में हमारा सकारात्मक सहयोग बढ़ रहा है।
Furthermore, India's deepening defense ties with Southeast Asian countries like Indonesia, support for the Philippines and South China Sea disputes, and arms contracts with Vietnam are crucial efforts to counterbalance China's influence. Major powers closely monitor India's strategic engagements, noting shifts from emphasizing soft power to becoming a reliable security and strategic partner in Southeast Asia. This evolving role, epitomized by engagements such as the ASEAN-India Maritime Exercise, signals India's proactive approach in strengthening regional security against the concerns regarding the South China Sea issue. Russia's approach to the South China Sea issue is characterized by a balancing act, particularly concerning its energy stakes and broader political standing in the region. Over the past decade, Russia's energy cooperation with China has significantly strengthened, reflecting its strategic imperative to diversify energy exports beyond Europe, where political tensions and resource depletion pose challenges. Exporting energy to the Asia-Pacific market, including China, has become a priority for Russia due to the critical role energy plays in its economy and federal budget.
It's a steadfast advance on our mutual goal of $200 billion trade turnover. I'm sure we will reach that point. Our oil producers prepared a very good solution on hydrocarbon supplies to China for today's meeting. And we made another step forward in the gas sector. I mean the new deal to supply China with 10 billion cubic meters of natural gas from the Far East.
The strategic diversification toward China provides Moscow with leverage over the European Union, enabling it to negotiate better terms and maintain economic and political influence on the global stage. Geopolitically, Russia shares common interests with China in promoting a multipolar world as an alternative to the US-dominated unipolar order. The rapid economic growth of China and its increasing energy demand are crucial for Russia's development plans in eastern Siberia and the Far East, aligning with its recent foreign policy strategy of pivoting towards the east. Despite its economic and strategic interest in the region, Russia maintains a neutral stance on sovereignty disputes in the South China Sea. It refrains from taking sides in these disputes and seeks to uphold its close ties with the Southeast Asian nations. Russia's engagement in the South China Sea potentially impacts its economic situation, especially if Moscow becomes overly dependent on China, which could potentially compromise its stance on regional issues. While Russia's direct stakes in the region may be limited compared to other major players, its energy cooperation with China and broader geopolitical considerations contribute to its engagement and strategic positioning in the Asia-Pacific. The South China Sea is viewed by major powers as a critical nexus of geopolitical dynamics and competition among regional players. Its abundant fishery resources, contributing to 12% of the world's total fish catch, and substantial reserves of oil and natural gas are seen as vital for sustaining livelihoods and economic growth in the region. Beyond its economic significance, the South China Sea serves as a crucial global maritime thoroughfare, facilitating over one-third of international maritime traffic valued more than $3 trillion annually. This strategic position connects major economies across Asia with markets in Europe, Africa, and the Americas, making it a focal point for competing territorial claims and overlapping maritime jurisdictions. Historical disputes over sovereignty among countries like China, Taiwan, the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Brunei have added layers of complexity to the South China Sea's geopolitical landscape. These disputes, rooted in centuries of historical interpretations and national pride, have created a web of tensions intertwined with strategic advantages. Recent incidents, like the confrontation between a Chinese Coast Guard vessel and a Philippine ship, signifies the persistent strain and unpredictability in the South China Sea. This episode highlights the close ties between the Chinese armed forces and maritime militia, revealing China's strategic orientation and the heightened risks in the maritime domain. In assessing the likelihood of conflict between the South China Sea and Taiwan, major powers recognize distinct dynamics within East Asian geopolitics. The Taiwan issue, characterized by cautious diplomacy and strategic restraint aimed at maintaining a status quo, contrasts with the South China Sea's more volatile and unpredictable scenario.
台湾问题纯属中国的内政。
The Taiwan question is for China alone to decide. The biggest threat to peace in the Taiwan Strait is Taiwanese separatism and its support from foreign forces.
The overlapping territorial claims, strategic interests, and China's assertive military actions contribute to a tense and complex environment prone to escalation, as evidenced by recent incidents like the confrontation between China and the Philippines. Complicating the situation are various interests and alliances, including treaty obligations like the Mutual Defense Treaty of 1951 with the Philippines, which further complicate dynamics in the South China Sea and heighten the risk of accidental escalation or deliberate provocation. Major powers acknowledge that while the Taiwan issue has been managed through strategic restraint and international pressure, the South China Sea, with its diverse actors and conflicting interests, presents a higher likelihood of conflict. Given the high stakes involved, major powers emphasize the imperative of preventive measures. These should include diplomatic engagement, confidence-building measures to enhance transparency and communication, adherence to international norms like the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, and strengthened regional collaboration to encourage peaceful dispute resolution. Additionally, from a U.S. perspective, the South China Sea is vital across three key areas: economic, defense ties with allies, and implications for the global power balance. Economically, the sea lanes passing through the South China Sea are critical for global shipping and significant trade. Defensively, the U.S. maintains alliances and security partnerships with key Asian nations, with regular naval patrols in the region. Most importantly, the South China Sea represents a crucial test of the rules-based international order supported by U.S. power. The contest over the South China Sea represents a critical battleground for competing geopolitical paradigms that will significantly shape the trajectory of the 21st century world. Thank you for tuning in to our channel. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analysis of global issues.